We talking about sports, get ball.
What it do, baby? Yeah.
I'm back. The real host of Creme Brulee. I mean, well, am I allowed to say that?
Wait, first of all, you're not gonna
I think so.
like you didn't just say what you just
Backed by popular demand. You number one podcast listeners. My wife, Steph, is back.
Hello, everyone.
You've tuned in to a special edition of the number one podcast in your headphones, Creme Brulee. I'm Premal Bot, and like I said, my beautiful, amazing wife has joined me. But before we get started, I wanted to get some housekeeping out of the way. Disclaimer. The statements made in this episode are the personal thoughts and opinions of parties only and should not be construed as medical advice on any subject matter. Please consult your medical professional for guidance based on your own situation. Now that we have that out of the way, you have officially tuned in to the number one podcast in your headphones in a special episode featuring you. Thanks for coming back, Steph.
Thanks for having me again. This is a big episode tonight.
Yeah, people kept wanting you back every time I heard, I really love all your episodes, but I think I like them most when Steph's on. No disrespect to any of my other co-hosts, but I think you kind of have a leg up on a lot of people.
I don't know why, though. I'm not as loud or flavorful, I feel like.
I think they just like the dynamic. Maybe you calm me down.
Oh, there you go.
But anyway, we have a special edition, and I feel like, should we drop the exciting news, babe?
Let's do it.
Okay, you do it.
Me do it?
Yeah.
Well, Creme Brulee listeners, for those of you who maybe don't see us on a regular basis, Prem and I are excited to announce that we are expecting.
Yes. Baby is due in January for us.
Does Bebe enjoy the theater?
And it has been an amazing, beautiful journey and a lot of pain that goes with it. But we wanted to share the beautiful news with the number one podcast listeners. We thought, what better way to make an announcement than have a podcast episode, a shameless plug for Creme Brulee.
It's pretty fitting.
You indulged me on this one.
Yeah. But I also think it's cool to have this platform, because a lot of times right now in our world, we just really see the positives everyone's going through. You post about the great things that are happening in your life, and this is probably the greatest thing that's happened to us, to know that we're able to start a family together. But like you kind of hinted at, it came with some hardship along the way. And I thought, you know what, it'd be good to share the real honest truth of what this last year was like for us, along with our happy news at the end.
For sure. Yeah, so our whole point in this is to talk about the journey to get to this point of good news. So I figure we might as well start with our story. And I guess we can go back and forth, babe, and kind of tell our story and add in. And just keep in mind that this is our story, and everybody goes through different things. But we just wanted to tell ours in the hopes that it would help someone somewhere, or at least get a chance to hear that it's not all what social media shows you. So, first of all, obviously we decided that we were ready to try to start a family. And pretty much we figured out pretty quick to go off of like an actual calendar instead of just pulling the goalie, so to speak.
Yeah, we did ovulation kits to be able to know exactly when the right time frame was each month. And we thought we were one of those super lucky couples at first, because the very first month we used one of those kits, we got a positive pregnancy test. And I remember that moment of us just kind of staring at each other in the kitchen, like wide-eyed, like, oh my gosh,
it's happening.
Pure joy. But we quickly learned that, when good things happen, it also comes with the other side of it.
Yep.
And we learned what a chemical pregnancy was just something that you and I had no idea what was before going through it ourselves.
So for those of you new to this game, and maybe you've never had to learn this, and that's great for you, chemical pregnancy is an early pregnancy loss that occurs shortly after implantation. So chemical pregnancies are estimated to account for about 50 to 75% of all miscarriages. Basically, long story short, egg becomes fertilized with sperm, but it doesn't ever implant where it needs to go. So sperm meets egg, you get a positive pregnancy test, but it doesn't go further from there.
Right. So my hormones were changing, which is what triggered the pregnancy test.
The positive pregnancy test, yeah.
But then a week or two later, we found out, like, oh, nope.
Yeah, and interesting enough, a lot of women don't even know that they're pregnant when they have one, because a lot of times it is very much like a period. So just a little background there. And it turns out we ended up having a second one of those not too long after. I think it was the very next month.
November.
Or the month after that. So we were having a high percentage of positive pregnancy tests, but they wouldn't attach and start growing.
Yep. So then I started to go to my doctor, and we got some initial blood work done in December, and got a clear bill of health, which was great. So we just kind of continued our adventure of trying. Come January, we got another positive pregnancy test, and this time we made it to the first ultrasound appointment. This was still during COVID time, so I had to go to the appointment myself. Prem wasn't allowed to be there. And right away I could tell something was up when my doctor started the ultrasound. She was saying that things just weren't looking normal. She wasn't sure if maybe our timeline was just wrong. So then I had to consecutively go back for 3 more weeks to get repeat ultrasounds to see what was going on. And in the end, it was determined that it was an unviable pregnancy at that point.
Right. So basically, kudos to Steph's doctor. The doctor's been great, and in that time period, we could tell by body language, thinking back on it, that it felt a little different. The reactions felt a little different, and the whole questioning of the timeline was probably, now that we look back in retrospect, probably a sign. So Steph went back in consecutive weeks, and essentially the sperm that met egg and implanted wasn't growing any, so it stopped growing after about what the doctor estimates 5 to 6 weeks. So doctor gave us basically 2 options, and one of them was that you naturally your body eventually will say, oh, this isn't growing, so it'll basically reject it, so to speak. So
Wait
you could
for the miscarriage to happen.
They call it a natural miscarriage, essentially. The other option they gave us was called a DNC, and that stands for dilation and curettage. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but everyone calls it a DNC, and everybody seems to know what we talk about. So just background on that, it's a procedure to remove tissue from inside the uterus. So doctors perform DNC to diagnose and treat certain uterine conditions. Sometimes it's something like heavy bleeding, or other times, like in our case, it's to clear the uterine lining after a miscarriage. So it's a pretty common surgical procedure after what ends up being a first trimester miscarriage, which was the case in this particular example that we had in January. So just for a little breakdown, about 50% of women who miscarry do not even go through a DNC procedure. Like we said before, women can safely miscarry on their own with very few problems in pregnancies that end before 10 weeks like ours was. But after 10 weeks, the miscarriage is more likely to be incomplete, and that's when you tend to require a DNC. They gave us the option in our particular example, and we kind of chose to do it.
Yeah, it was also, you risk infection if you wait for your body to naturally miscarry, just because we didn't know when and if that was going to happen. So just for our own health and our own peace of mind, it was the right choice for us to make that decision. But, every couple is different, and every woman's body is different. But for us, it was good to have a clear date, mentally, to process everything that was going on. I was still teaching at the time, so I felt having a clear time off versus being unsure when something was going to happen felt right for my situation as well. But again, after such a mentally taxing event in hormones going crazy on my part, I healed pretty quickly, and after a procedure like this, you're asked to wait 1 cycle before you can try again. So,
I do want to really quick say that you hinted at it. It's 100% up to the couple's decision, and there's no right or wrong answer. Our thought process, in addition to wanting to clean things up and prevent any kind of infection, was also kind of emotional. It was like you just said, babe, that we had a set date, not only for work purposes and all that logical stuff, but from an emotional standpoint, it felt like we could kind of have that event and take a day to ourselves and then fully kind of start the process to move on and heal. Mm-hmm. So it allowed us that time instead of kind of, we felt like we would be anticipating when it's naturally going to happen.
Very much
So you and I are both planners, and we just felt more comfortable with that after talking to your doctor and the doctor explaining that it wasn't a major risk. It was a kind of in and out procedure in the doctor's office in your case. So, and they allowed me to be in it at the time, which was, again, during COVID time. So we were grateful that we actually got to process that together and had a set date to be able to move on from. But yeah, kind of going back to it, then it took about 4 to 6 weeks for you to be recovered or able for us to start trying again.
Yeah. And I personally, again, all of this experience is such a unique experience to each person, and it's how you process and how you feel. But I felt like my body and my hormones were going through so many changes after the 2 chemical pregnancies, now the miscarriage that led to a DNC. So I asked Prem if we could, take a little bit of a hiatus from our family planning to let my mental health also heal from everything. So we took a little bit of a break. We both enjoyed our 30th birthdays and the world kind of reopening again and getting vaccinated, and all these positive events were happening. And now here we are. We started trying again.
Right. Your birthday was in April,
May.
so we around May. May was when we started again.
And now here we are, 14 weeks pregnant.
Yeah, into the second trimester officially. Just, it's been, as you number one podcast listeners are no doubt hearing, it's been a crazy roller coaster. So I know we summarized it in a matter of a few minutes, but this is in reality a whole year's worth of trying and being heartbroken and then being happy again and then holding your breath, all that stuff in the middle. But I didn't want to breeze past this point because we were talking about that mental game, but the doctor, speaking of more kudos to our medical professionals, in our particular case, the doctor emphasized that the 3 things that happened, so the 2 chemical pregnancies and the DNC, were not related. That's not to say that every situation's like that. We don't mean to be medical professionals, but in our particular scenario, the doctor was very adamant in letting us know that this wasn't, it may feel related, but these are all independent events. And the doctor didn't feel that our chances were low to end up being successful and having a baby attach and grow and all those things. So the doctor reassuring us, telling us that felt good about our chances, was very helpful for me. I think the same for you, right?
Yeah, especially she explained it to us that the chemical pregnancies were more like my body didn't exactly know what to do with the, fertilized egg. It was like still learning basically. And then in her eyes, which it was hard to see obviously when we were going through it physically and mentally, but in her eyes, the miscarriage that resulted in the DNC was a good sign because it meant that my body then knew what to do with that fertilized egg, and I was able to be pregnant. And those are all things that they're looking for when you have a couple that maybe don't have the best of luck right away. So she did keep ensuring us along the roads that as much as it was heartbreaking, there were good signs for things happening for us and headed in the right direction. And again, all my blood work and all of my exams were all showing healthy So we were fortunate in that sense. We just were unfortunate in being in that 1 in 4 women that have trouble with miscarriages before getting pregnant. And it's a sad statistic, and there's not a lot of research to say why, but we just fell into that stat.
Yep. Unfortunately for us, and I know probably a lot of other number one podcast listeners out there know someone or personally been impacted by something like this. So that's kind of why we're sharing our story. I wanted to be at least partly informative in addition to our story and being open with it. So I did want to be sure I talk some miscarriage statistics, and this is via the March of Dimes. So just in case you don't know, miscarriage is when a baby dies in the womb before 20 weeks of pregnancy. And like we said earlier, some women have a miscarriage before they even know they're pregnant. For women who do know they're pregnant, about 10 to 15 in every 100 pregnancies end in miscarriage. And most miscarriages happen in the first trimester before the 12th week of pregnancy. And it's estimated that as many as half of all pregnancies may end in miscarriage. And the thing about that is it's not known what the exact number is, because miscarriage may happen before a woman knows she's pregnant. So those statistics are estimates, and a lot of times they're just in the women that do know.
Right. We were actively trying. So, when I had a delayed period, we went to a pregnancy test. But, if you're not actively trying, you might just think, oh, I had a stressful month, so I'm a little delayed, or, something like that. So there could definitely be a lot more women experiencing what we learned was chemical pregnancies that are undocumented. Yeah.
Had no idea even what that term was before. The thing that hopefully that, knock on wood, everything continues into the second trimester and third, and then eventually to our January due date. Most women who miscarry go on to have a healthy pregnancy later. So if you're one of those people that's kind of going through it or has been through it, hopefully you're also part of that statistic if you unfortunately had to be part of the first part of that, of what we talked about. So we're hoping the same for us and all of you out there, of course. Positive thoughts always, except when it comes to sports, of course. So, given all that, the roller coaster of emotion, good news, bad news, why are we here today? We kind of hinted at it already. Well, I think we've been fortunate to have a support system to talk to and lean on, and we found how valuable it is. So we wanted to foster conversations like this. I genuinely think our generation does better about talking about this than our parents' generation did. And nothing against our parents. It's just seemed like more of a private generation is kind of the vibe of them. Talking about your own situation tends to open others up to sharing theirs. You never know. They may have never been able to share that before either. And you being open with yours could end up allowing them to kind of free themselves from that burden. And if they don't want to, that's okay too. I don't mean to make it that you have to talk about it. But for our particular case, it really helped, I think.
Yeah, it was wonderful having our support system around us and having a couple really trusted friends and family members that we could be brutally honest with how we were feeling through our ups and downs. And sadly, it was easiest to talk about once we had the positive experience, like once we got to this point where we feel comfortable, we've gotten a clear bill of health, we're past that first trimester, and I'm feeling pretty good overall. So it makes it easier to talk about the hardships because we got to our rainbow, as everyone likes to say. But I hope maybe conversations like this can help others open up earlier and feel more willing to share their vulnerability, even maybe while they're going through it versus having to wait till after.
Definitely. Miscarriage is so common. So our goal is for those people who don't know how common it is or maybe haven't felt comfortable to talk, know that they're not alone. And even if you're not comfortable talking about it, hopefully this episode kind of helps you in that sense, almost like you are talking to someone, but no one has to ask you questions if it's too painful. And we get that because we went through that part. Just like you said, it's a little bit easier to talk about once we had one get past that point. So, so I did want to make sure that we talked about this and you and I have talked about this all the time as we've gone through this process, and at least at the beginning, it was just us going through it before we opened up and talked to people about it. But I wanted to ask you, babe, what are some of the ways you coped during that time?
The biggest thing for me was I took a full social media break for about 4 or 5 months in the heat, in the heart of us going through our hardships. It was one of those things where I just, every time I saw something positive, it was this battle of, you want to be so happy for others going through positive life events because you know in your own heart how hard it is to go through the rough points, and it's just to be celebrated that these happy events are happening. But at the same time, I was feeling extremely jealous, and then that would lead to guilt because I would feel guilty for having negative thoughts towards someone else's happy news.
Right.
So it was just mentally not healthy for me to be invested in the world of social media during that time. So I stepped away. I removed the apps from my phone and relied on you to pass on anything I needed to
pertinent news,
any pertinent news I needed to know,
since
that is how the main news is shared these days. But it helped me process my emotions, and it helped me deal with what I needed to deal with in my own heart and in my own head, so that when I returned to that world, I had a healthier outlook, and I was able to recognize that it was okay to feel jealous, and it didn't mean that I was a bad person or had bad karma coming my way or something like that. It was just a reflection of our journey and what we were going through, and I could be jealous and extremely happy at the exact same time. And I learned how to cope with that, but I definitely had to take a step away in order to get to that spot.
Yeah, and it's worth emphasizing, like you and I talked about this, that you were genuinely happy for people, but it's hard to be around that when you don't have good news yourself. It's very difficult. I mean, it's tough, and we're at the age where we also see a lot of baby announcements, and it's tough to reconcile, like, why can't we be one of those? Or, wow, I bet they didn't have to go through any struggles, like as if that even mattered. That's a fortunate thing if someone did, but it's hard to get past that when your own situation sucks. And it's kind of coping with that, knowing that you're not wishing them harm. All you're doing is like, hey, it sucks for us by seeing it. What had nothing to do with other people. It's more about our own situation. And I think that break was great. I think it was a healthy thing to do, and just shut off from it and, just be present in where we are. So I personally did not take a social media break. I tried my best to stay positive. I'm not going to lie. I'm naturally a positive person. You number one podcast listeners may not fully comprehend that because you usually hear me ranting about sports, but outside of that, I'm a pretty positive person. So for me, the big thing is I look for kind of reassurances and signs, and that reassurance that was given to us by your doctor about the 3 events not being related really helped me. And that's another plug for the disclaimer I read at the top of the episode. Only by seeking out your doctor and the doctor knowing your situation and using his or her expertise can you know any of this for sure. So another plug to every situation is different. So be sure you don't use our story as your source of information. If you're going to trust one source, it should be your doctor. So just wanted to emphasize that. But that personally helped me very much. I try to be kind of logical in my positivity too. So that helped me process it. And I don't know, it definitely was weird holding our breath. Because speaking of roller coaster, you start off so pumped for that positive pregnancy test, that first one we got. And then it turns into holding your breath to make it past a couple weeks, so that because we had those chemical pregnancies. And then we had one attach but not grow. So then it was holding our breath to make sure it continued to grow. But thankfully that happened. And Steph, again, had an amazing doctor that was nice enough to let us come in early and often to get ultrasounds, giving us peace of mind and calming our anxieties. The doctor anticipated the anxieties we were going to have, even saying things like, hey, you're going to feel great for the next couple of days, but right around middle of the week, you're going to be wanting to come back for another ultrasound. And to the doctor's credit, it was exactly correct. We are so thankful that we were able to, and the doctor realized our situation and knew it would give us peace of mind. So those kind of little things helped me. And obviously you already emphasized our support system. People were understanding, they were sensitive to it, but didn't make every time we saw them about that, because we didn't want to be felt sorry for. It was just people, you could tell people caring and checking in on us.
Yeah, if you're going through anything similar to what we went through, I would highly recommend, if it's not a friend or a family member, maybe it's, a therapist or someone you can talk to, just to help you process your emotions. Because and from the female perspective, not only were you going through a lot emotionally, but like hormonally, your hormones are going through so much because your body thinks it's pregnant, then it's not, and it's clearing itself out. And so it was really helpful when I was in the thick of that to have someone clear-headed to kind of hear me out, but also point out where maybe the hormones were playing in or not. And so yes.
And fellas, disclaimer, don't play the hormone card ever. Don't ever play yourself, like a little precursor to the next section, but that's not your job to do. Let whoever it is, your partner who is actually going through it hormonally, come to that conclusion, or have someone else who's gone through it come to that conclusion. Don't play yourselves. Yes. But great plug for professional help too. It's not, maybe your situation doesn't call for talking to your friends or family, and that's totally fine. But it is a nice plug to be able to talk to someone who's maybe fresh to the situation, can help you see a side to it, who's gone to a lot of school to do that. So definitely always a plug for your mental health, especially when you're adding hormones to the fold there. So great point.
And just take care of yourself too. And that was the biggest piece of advice I got. And, it's easier said than done. But when your body is healthy and when your mind is healthy and when you're not under stress is when you can be at your most peak fertility. So that was also a little bit of a balance of realizing that being anxious and being stressed and honing in on it so much was actually causing more negative, like harm than good. Mm-hmm. So finding that balance of taking care of myself, but not fixating too much on what we were going through.
Way easier said than done. But I think in that case, the break we took kind of around our birthdays really helped the two of us. Because there's a lot of pressure, and then you have the positive tests, and then they end up not working. So you start to really starts to mess with your mental. So, doing whatever you can to help that, and that's where talking to people or professionals can help that kind of clear your mind and get you in the right headspace to be able to handle this change in your bodies and hormones and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. But okay, well, that wasn't officially Yeah Fam or Not, because we're obviously not going to Yeah Fam or Not any of that stuff, but we do officially have a You Played Yourself section. So let's go ahead and hit that intro, baby.
I'm super petty.
Here we
Petty Le Pew.
go.
All right, you number one podcast listeners, we didn't want to leave you hanging and have no You Played Yourself, because that wouldn't be very on brand. So we thought we'd stick with the theme and add a few You Played Yourselves regarding what we went through. And hopefully it brings a little smile to your face. And if you've gone through it, you kind of know what we're talking about. So first up, You Played Yourself goes to your health teachers. Those same health teachers that told you that as soon as you started having sex, you'd wind up with a baby. Well, newsflash, and this is not a way to get around practicing safe sex out there. If your number one podcast listeners are thinking it is, that's not what I'm condoning. I mean, when you're family planning, there's literally a 48-hour window in a month that is prime time to conceive a baby. And we were told and made it out to be like the minute we started having sex, it was gonna be baby time. So You Played Yourself goes to your health teachers. I still love all you health teachers, especially middle school health teachers. Shout out Miss Bankston. She's the best. But we were definitely tricked into this fear after what we found out.
Yeah.
Right?
Me hard.
Crazy.
I'd like to take this chance to apologize to absolutely nobody.
Also, kind of along the same lines, you played yourself to spending all that time worrying and preventing pregnancy over these years, only for it to take a while when you're actually wanting to get pregnant. Ain't that some shit? Like, hey, did all this stuff to stop it, and now when you finally want to have one, it takes a while. So you played yourself to that logic. Okay, do you want to go? You got any, babe?
Sure. So this is kind of tying to what we went through and current events, I guess.
Yeah.
But mine is you played yourself to those people out there saying, oh, I can't get the COVID vaccine because it's going to affect my fertility.
Love it.
I'm proof right here talking into this microphone that I was vaccinated in February and we were pregnant in May. So here I am, healthy and 14 weeks along and vaccinated. So, you know, if you need some anecdotal evidence that you can still get pregnant and be vaccinated, here I am. So go get vaccinated.
Do your fucking research, by the way.
Yeah.
Like, there's no scientific proof of that. So stop believing what you hear or see from your high school classmate on Facebook. We've talked about this time and time again. You were on here for Couples Edition during quarantine. We talked about it ad nauseum then. Yeah. So this is no different. I love that you played yourself, and I love that it was very spicy out of you, babe.
And it was kind of our silver lining through it all because we, as a teacher, I was offered the vaccine end of January, early February, and initially I was going to have to say no if we were pregnant because at
the time there was even less information. Yeah,
at the time they were waiting until after your first trimester to receive the vaccine, but because of our miscarriage and because of the DNC, I was able to receive it with all the other teachers in Central Ohio, and that was a silver lining for us in our hardship, knowing that something good was kind of coming out of this pain. So if you have hesitations, I'm willing to talk to you about it.
Yes. And do reputable research, please, for crying out loud. And I got one more, okay? I wanted to take this opportunity once and for all for the people to know out there. Don't fucking play yourself in this particular scenario. Stop asking women, men, couples, who have whatever combination they are when they're having children. You do not know their situation. You don't know what they've been through to that point. It's not always that simple. People really go through it. They're not just miscarriages. There's fertility issues, having to do things like IVF. And IVF, for example, is such a crazy, expensive, taxing process for couples. You may know a couple that's done IVF. You may not, but I encourage you to do your research and maybe ask around if someone knows someone that's done it. They spend all that money, time, and emotional investment. Woman that's going to be carrying the baby, potential baby, has to get shots. And you're not even guaranteed a successful try. You spend all that investment and it may not even work. Yes, the odds are much better, and obviously it's proven to work before, but imagine going through all that even after that particular couple who's doing IVF has likely tried for at least a year unsuccessfully. So stop fucking asking people that. Imagine asking a couple why they don't have kids after they've gone through IVF and a year of trying. Could you even imagine that pain? So even beyond that, even beyond like if they did IVF, if they didn't, it ain't your damn business unless they offer that information. You might mean well, but just don't fucking do it. I think it's time we finally all heard that. Tell your parents, tell your grandparents, tell whoever, your uncle, your aunts, your Facebook friends, stop fucking asking couples when they're gonna have a baby. It's not right. They don't want to hear it. They'll offer it to you. And if they don't, too fucking bad. You can wonder all day till you're blue in the face. We agree with that?
I agree with that 100%.
Yes. Comes with knowledge. You may be naive to it, but I'm here to provide you that knowledge. So if you didn't previously know that, this is your opportunity. Just listen to what I just said without the attitude, because if you were naive to it, I won't get mad at you like that, but here we are.
You're great.
Okay. Now, this is where we usually do who you got and what you feeling, but we're not making picks here, obviously. I mean, I guess you number one podcast listeners out there can make picks for if you think it's a boy or girl. We will announce that later, but maybe that's about it. But we're not going to make those predictions because we already know what it is. So I wanted to get this chance for you to tell me what you're feeling, babe.
Well, after we were able to share our story and, the parts that were the low points in our story, obviously what I'm feeling right now is being able to share the high points too. We successfully made it out of the first trimester. You kind of mentioned this earlier. We were able to have 4 ultrasounds over the last 12 weeks, which
isn't normal.
Yeah. 3 more than you normally have.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely was feeling being able to see our little baby and see the progress. It changes so much from just like this little bean thing to actually looking like a
It feels like
baby.
It happens all of a sudden. And talk about wild out, but hearing that heartbeat for the first time is just like so goosebumps cool. Worthy. It's one of the coolest moments of my life for sure.
So definitely just feeling that we're able to now share happy news after almost a year of kind of having to share hardship. And, while we're open people and we have such a close-knit group of friends, we also didn't want to kind of be the Debbie Downers of our friends and family. So as we were processing things over the year, we were trying to focus on the positives as much as possible. But now being able to actually share the positive news, and especially with our parents, both sets of families, it was such a joy to see their faces and their smiles and their tears, and to have everyone share in our own joy, knowing that there was some tears shed along the way to get here. So that's definitely what
some
I'm
happy
feeling.
tears. Yeah, I'm feeling that as well. In addition to being able to tell our family, our siblings, all that stuff, being able to tell our close friends, a lot of them we've made the rounds and told them in person. Or if they weren't in town, told them via text message. So that was just a really cool moment to be able to share. Number one podcast listeners may or may not know, Steph and I have been together since high school. So it's kind of a cool thing to be able to share people who've known us for so long, sharing our happy news. So especially those, well, now everyone's going to know about the roller coaster we went through to get here, but no matter what, it's an amazing thing to be able to celebrate, and it really truly doesn't get lost on you after what we went through, like knowing how difficult it is to get to this point, how happy we are to get here. And that's not to say you people out there that have struggled, I hope that this gives you some kind of a glimmer of hope, and if not, just want you to know that, Steph and I are here for you, even if it's through re-listening to this episode if you need it. But especially talking if you ever need to. So definitely feeling all that. I love those. But now on to Too Much Sense. Let's hit it. Okay, I wanted to wrap up this special edition of Prem Brulee by emphasizing a point amongst all this. None of what we went through is to make anyone feel bad. Like, if you're having a kid and had no problems, you shouldn't have to hide that. It really is a beautiful thing. Any way that it happens for those expecting is incredible. Even if you weren't expecting and you have it happen, truly understand how amazing it is. And that's not fully all scenarios. I know there are certain ones, we won't get into that. But when you're trying for one, or you're in a good space to be able to have one, any way that it happens in that particular scenario is incredible. Share your good news. If it really is good news, share it. I know we talked about social media and having to take a hiatus, but if you have good news, you got to share it. You got to love seeing people win out there. It's good for you. It's good for the soul. It motivates others to be able to share their good stuff. So the main thing I wanted to get at is, if you know of a couple that has struggled, it's still okay to share your good news, but talk to them. It may be too painful to talk about it for a long time. Like, you may not see like prolonged joy in their face, but you can still share your news. It may end up adding on to it if they learn you didn't tell them your good news, just because you're trying to protect their feelings. So I know it's a tough scenario to navigate, but talk to your people. Celebrate your wins, but be there for their struggles too. That's what friends and family are for. You would want someone close to you to feel like they could lean on you with their bad news, so don't think they wouldn't want to celebrate your good news. And that's kind of the main point I want to get across. This isn't meant to make anyone feel bad if they had an easy time getting pregnant, all that stuff. It's more to just share our story, and if anyone out there hasn't been able to share it or needs to hear it, that's kind of why we wanted to do this, I think. And that was the main point of any of this. It happens in all these different ways, and if you're fortunate enough to be in a good situation and be ready for one, it's an amazing thing. Yeah. And that's my too much sense for this episode. And with that, it wraps up a very special edition of Prem Brulee, the most special edition, because I got to tell you, number one podcast listeners, that my beautiful co-host over here and I are going to have a baby due in January. And we are so excited. And we want to thank you, number one podcast listeners, as always, for giving us an ear and being willing to listen to our little roller coaster of a story. And hopefully it continues to be good. And hopefully those of you out there that have dealt with a similar situation or know someone, know that people are out there here for you. And if not, you got me and Steph here.
Yeah, thank you for listening. Thank you for letting us share our story. Thank you for sharing both in our hardship and in our joy.
Yeah.
And hopefully send good vibes our way these next couple of months. We continue to adjust and grow. And
What's the baby? I'm so relieved.
Yeah, and hopefully help us deal with our anxieties, not questioning every little thing, and
that'd be
being able to recognize that hopefully it is a healthy pregnancy, but we're still holding our breath. So any positive thoughts you want to send our way, we will take.
Yep, and we'll send them right back to all of you out there, as always. And that'll do it for this special edition of the number one podcast in your headphones, Prem Brulee. For my beautiful wife and better co-host, Steph, I am Premal, and we'll talk to you next time.